After another fight with my girlfriend, she changed the password to the front door and locked me out. All she left me with was a cold text. Think long and hard about what you did. I stood outside until the evening streetlights flickered on, but I still couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong. My girlfriend was still furious. She had a twisted way of showing affection, always getting angry for no apparent reason. I used to think all I needed was a little more patience to coax her out of it. But this time I was just tired. I didn't want to coax her anymore. I walked into my home office and found my design mock-ups scattered all over the floor. Stella was standing in the middle of the mess, her eyes burning with resentment as she stared at me. I took a deep breath and knelt to pick up the papers she had torn to shreds. I'd pulled 2 all-nighters to get these done on a tight deadline. It took her less than 2 minutes to destroy them. The only sound in the room was the soft rustle of paper. The air grew heavy and thick with tension. Stella's voice was an accusation. All you care about are your stupid mock-ups. That's when I noticed her hand. A large blister on her index finger had popped while she was ripping up my work, and it was now oozing a mix of blood and fluid. Stella glared at me, not moving an inch. In the end, I was the one who caved. I got the first aid kit to treat her wound. As I bandaged her finger, I listened to her lecture me. Is work more important than your health? You already have a sensitive stomach, and you still refuse to eat on time. On the table sat a bowl of freshly made fish porridge, steam rising from it with a fragrant aroma. Someone like Stella, who was used to a life of luxury, had gone into the kitchen just for me and ended up hurting herself. I'd been so focused on work that I told her to just leave the porridge and I'd eat it later. I never imagined that I'd come back from a quick trip to the bathroom to find she had torn up my mock-ups. How many times have I told you not to sacrifice your health for work? Leo, do you ever actually listen to a word I say? Every word she spoke was laced with concern, but her tone was ice cold. She was always like this, doing things that were supposedly for my own good, but with a terrible attitude. I glanced at the shredded designs, then at the steaming porridge. I let out a long sigh. Fine, I'll let it go this time. We'd been together for nearly 5 years. I couldn't bear to throw it all away. If it happened again, I told myself I would end it. But I never expected again to come so soon. On our 5th anniversary, I came home carrying a cake, only to find I couldn't open the door. I'd left my keys inside, and after 3 tries, the password was still wrong. I called Stella's number. She didn't pick up for 10 minutes, and when she did, she just left me with that same cold line. Think long and hard about what you did. I stood outside until night fell and the streetlights blinked on, one by one, but I still had no idea how I'd upset her. Stella finally called back. Have you figured out what you did wrong? I didn't answer. Her voice turned frosty. Then you can stay out there. Unlike all the other times, I didn't press her for a reason. I just said, okay. I threw the cake in the nearest trash can. Guided by the dim streetlights, I walked into the night, step by step, leaving behind the place I had called home for 5 years. I checked into a hotel for the night. At 2 a.m., I opened my phone. Not a single message from Stella. She was an incredibly proud person and would never be the first to apologize. She couldn't even express her concern for me directly. She always kept her true feelings locked away. I always had to guess, just to get a tiny glimpse of what was on her mind. I never understood why she couldn't just show her affection openly. It wasn't until a friend told me, Stella's just one of those proud types who acts tough. You just have to sweet talk her, and it'll blow over. But I was too tired. I didn't want to be the one to back down anymore. I didn't want to coax her. So I sent Stella a message. We're breaking up. Ending it for good was the best possible outcome for us. The next day, when I got to the office, Ben saw me arrive alone. Why didn't Stella drive you? You two have a fight? Ben was Stella's friend and also my boss. He'd witnessed our entire relationship over the years, so he could spot trouble from a mile away. Ben tried to reason with me. You know how Stella is. She acts all nonchalant, but deep down, she cares more than anything. I knew everything he was saying was true. I knew she was like that from the first time I met her. I was attending an industry conference with a senior colleague who was good friends with Stella's family. He offered Stella a ride since she was going to the same event. When she got in the car, she lost her balance and stumbled right into me. Before I could say a word, she preemptively started scolding me. But the tips of her ears were bright red. I decided to tease her. "So, how do you want to handle this? Should I offer myself in return?" Stella's face went completely crimson. She immediately adopted a high and mighty posture. "Plenty of people are into me. You won't get a chance in this lifetime. Maybe try in the next." After she said it, she unconsciously pursed her lips, her eyes meeting mine for a second before darting away. I just smiled, not thinking much of it. Before we got out of the car, Stella held her phone out to me. I looked at her, confused. She turned her head away, refusing to look at me. "Give me your number. Since you guys gave me a ride today, I should get in touch to return the favor when I have time." My colleague winked at me, and I instantly understood. Given his friendship with her family, there was no reason for Stella to go through me to return a favor. She clearly just wanted my number and had come up with a lame excuse. I knew back then that she was awkward and never said what she meant. It wasn't a huge flaw. I could accept it, until our first major fight after we got together. I had just wrapped up a huge project, and we had plans to celebrate. But I waited all day and never saw her. She didn't answer my calls or reply to my texts. I was on the verge of calling the police when she finally showed up, her face a cold mask, not saying a word. I found out from a friend that it was because I hadn't worn the watch she gave me when I left the house that day. She had spent a long time picking it out. The fact that I accepted it but didn't wear it made her feel like I had dismissed her feelings and didn't care about her. So she sulked and went off the grid. But she could have just told me directly instead of making me guess. I can't read minds. I can't be expected to perfectly decipher her mixed signals every single time. Once, I came home from work completely exhausted and fell asleep on the couch. I opened my eyes in the middle of the night to find Stella sitting beside me. Her voice was flat. "Since you're so busy, we might as well just cancel our trip." Work had been piling up, and I was constantly working overtime. I wasn't sure I could finish everything before our planned vacation date. So, without thinking too much, I agreed with her. I never expected her to shoot me a hateful glare, jump up, and slam the door on her way out. The moment the loud bang hit my eardrums, I realized she had meant the opposite. She had been looking forward to that trip, so why couldn't she just communicate with me directly? Exhausted both mentally and physically, for the first time, I felt a deep sense of disappointment in Stella. I pushed those negative feelings down. During my lunch break, I called a locksmith. Stella would never give me the new password, but my things were still in her house, and I needed to get them back. The moment the door opened, I saw Stella sitting on the living room sofa, her expression so dark it looked like it was about to drip ink. The locksmith looked at me, confused. I transferred him the money and walked straight toward the second-floor bedroom. "Leo," Stella called out to me, "you just let a complete stranger into our home? Is this how you treat what you call our home?" The year I graduated from college, my parents died in a car accident. For a long time after that, I was completely alone. Sometimes I'd see a family of 3 and feel a pang of envy, an endless melancholy rising in my heart. After Stella and I got together, we squeezed into a rental for a while, until her startup took off and she bought this house. That day, she placed the key in my hand and promised, "You said you wanted a home, didn't you? I'm giving you one." It was one of the rare times she expressed her feelings so directly. I cherished it, and I always considered this place a home that belonged exclusively to us. I had always imagined that if our relationship ever fell apart, Stella would be the one to leave without a second thought. I never expected I would be the one to go first. Stella's accusations continued. "What is your problem? You're the one who did something wrong." I cut her off. "It doesn't matter anymore. We already broke up." Stella froze, standing there in a daze. I walked around her and went upstairs to pack. The entire house was filled with memories of her. We had snuggled on the sofa watching movies, used matching couples' mugs in the bathroom, and watched fireworks from the balcony. The moment the night sky lit up, she had wrapped her arms around my waist and kissed me passionately. But I don't know when it started now. Whenever I opened the door, All I felt was a suffocating pressure. Stella seemed to have forgotten her promise. After every argument, she would stay at her office. She wouldn't come home until I apologized. In the past, I had said I'm sorry to her countless times. I never wanted to say it again. When I came downstairs with my suitcase, Stella was still standing in the same spot. I was planning to ignore her and leave, but as I passed by, she grabbed my hand. Take back what you just said. No. A vein throbbed on Stella's temple as she suppressed her anger. Fine. Then let's break up. And don't you ever come looking for me again. She pulled out her phone, blocked my number, and pointed to the door. Get out. Leo, what's wrong with you? A new colleague, a recent college grad, asked with concern when he saw my expression. I shook my head to show I was fine and continued explaining the project workflow to him. Ben suddenly rushed over, pulled the new guy away to do something else, and then whispered to me, "Are you crazy talking to him? You're not afraid of Stella getting jealous?" I had no idea what he was talking about. Ben explained that on our anniversary, Stella had planned to pick me up early, but she saw me laughing and talking with the new colleague, got angry, and drove home by herself. So that was why she'd locked me out. You really need to wise up, Ben sighed. Stop making her angry. We broke up. Ben stared at me, and after confirming I wasn't joking, he said in shock, "For real? Don't do that. Stella cares about you a lot. Believe it or not, that girl is probably crying in a corner somewhere right now." As if afraid I wouldn't believe him, Ben immediately called Stella. She picked up right away. "Hello." It was just one word, but it was filled with hoarseness and despair. I had heard that voice countless times. I remembered it as cool and magnetic, the end of her sentences always carrying a hint of pride. It had never sounded so defeated. Ben shot me a look and said into the phone, "Leo is right here next to me. If you have anything to say, talk to him now." As soon as she knew I was there, Stella's tone shifted instantly. "I have nothing to say to him. I'm hanging up." Ben looked completely embarrassed. Maybe because I had always been so accommodating in the past, Stella didn't take my breakup threat seriously. After all, those two words carried too much weight. I had never dared to say them lightly, because I understood that once they were spoken, there was no turning back. It also meant that I truly wanted to be done with her. As quitting time approached, the office suddenly got lively. I heard a colleague say, "Did you guys see her? The woman in the boss's office is gorgeous. Prettier than a movie star. I heard she's a friend of the boss. I'm gonna ask him for her contact info later." So lame. Why don't you just ask her yourself? As Chris said this, he leaned in toward me. "Hey, Leo, you were out with a client earlier, so you missed her. I secretly took a picture for you to feast your eyes on." Chris handed me his phone. Sure enough, it was Stella. In the past, Stella had never gotten out of the car when she dropped me off at work. My colleagues knew I had a girlfriend, but they had no idea what she looked like. Suddenly, the office door opened from the inside, and Stella walked out, heading toward the restroom. Her eyes lit up when she saw me at my desk. I kept my focus on my work and didn't look her way. Stella's expression visibly darkened. She let out a cold huff and strode past me without a glance. The discussion among my colleagues continued. But I feel like beautiful women often have some kind of personality flaw. A goddess like that is best admired from a distance. Don't get too close. You're such a coward. With a face like that, I could put up with anything. Just watch how I win her over. Chris was a man of his word. He bought coffee for the entire office. He delivered Stella's cup to her personally. I watched as Stella graciously accepted it and thanked him. One thing led to another, and soon they had exchanged contact information. During their chat, Stella even shot me a pointed look. It was as if she was saying, "You don't know how to appreciate me, but there are better men who will." For a solid week, Stella came to the office every single day. At first, she would glance at me defiantly, but eventually, her gaze no longer lingered on me for even a second. Instead, she and Chris grew closer and closer. My colleagues were all saying they would be a couple soon. Ben pulled me aside. "How can you just sit there? If you don't make a move, Stella's really going to end up with someone else." I asked Ben, She's the one flirting with other people. Why don't you go talk to her? Ben said, you know how stubborn she is, she won't listen to anyone. You two were together for so many years. It's a shame to just let it all go. After my best friend learned about my dynamic with Stella, he once pulled me aside for an all-night talk. He patiently analyzed my situation, subtly and not so subtly advising me to leave her. But Stella's friends had the complete opposite attitude. After every fight, they would push us to reconcile. It took me a long time to realize that as outsiders, they could clearly see who was the one always giving in and who was the one benefiting from the relationship. I just saw it too late, which is why the breakup ended so messily for me. A sudden cheer broke my train of thought. I followed the sound and saw that Stella had given Chris a watch. Chris looked embarrassed. It was just a cup of coffee. You didn't have to do this. Stella smiled warmly. I really liked the flavor, so this is a special thank you. Please accept it. A hint of romantic tension hung in the air. I heard someone in the crowd murmur, "How romantic." Stella was indeed a romantic person. She would remember every holiday and plan something special. Last Valentine's Day, she booked a table at the Hilton with a perfect view, inviting me to watch the beach light show. As the golden lights danced and shimmered, Stella placed a huge bouquet of vibrant red roses in my arms, and I put the necklace I had bought for her around her neck. A passing tourist captured the moment on video and posted it online. People in the comments gushed, calling us a perfect couple. But the mood at that moment hadn't been good at all. Stella had been furious, constantly berating me. "This is hideous. I've never seen a necklace so ugly. You're dragging down my taste level. Leo, don't you ever try to be clever and buy me gifts again." Hearing her say that had genuinely hurt me. I had spent ages picking out that necklace, even consulting with several industry experts before buying it. But if Stella didn't like it, all my effort was meaningless. Later, Ben told me that the truth wasn't what it seemed. Stella was a rich girl, born with a silver spoon in her mouth. To her, I was just an ordinary guy. She didn't want to see me working myself to the bone, taking on extra shifts just to buy her expensive gifts. That's why she used harsh words to put me down. But now, watching her speak so gently to Chris, a belated wave of bitterness washed over me. So, she did know how to say thank you for a gift. She wasn't only capable of hurling insults. So, she was capable of offering positive emotional support. She just wasn't willing to do it for me. I could no longer tell which of her consistently harsh attitudes were her being stubborn for my own good and which were genuine contempt. Her love was always hidden beneath an iceberg. When I reached out for an embrace, all I felt was a bone-chilling cold. I pulled my gaze away and turned to leave. Behind me, a colleague mentioned that Chris was planning to confess his feelings to Stella that day. But after work, I was stopped by an enraged Chris. He slapped me across the face and yelled, "Stella is your girlfriend. Why didn't you say anything? You were enjoying watching me make a fool of myself, weren't you? After I looked out for you so much, this is how you repay me, by backstabbing me? You two sickos. I feel disgusted just looking at you." Chris was making a huge scene. Passers-by stared and whispered among themselves. My left cheek stinging, I stared intently at Stella as she walked toward me. "Is this what you wanted?" Stella turned her head away, her tone as arrogant as ever. "It's your own fault for doing something wrong and refusing to apologize." A profound sense of powerlessness washed over me. I didn't want to deal with her anymore and quickly walked away. Stella chased after me and grabbed my hand. "You're going the wrong way. That's not the way home." She had probably been staying at her office these past few days and had no idea that I hadn't been back to our so-called home at all. I shook her hand off, more serious than I had ever been. "Stella, we're not together anymore. Stop bothering me." A flicker of helplessness crossed Stella's eyes. While she was stunned, I opened my car door, got in, rolled up the window and sped away. In the rearview mirror, her figure grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. I requested annual leave from the company and booked a flight to my hometown. Before I left, I received an unexpected call. The person on the other end said, "Do you have some time? Let's talk." At the coffee shop, Julian sat across from me. He was Stella's brother. When Stella and I first got together, Her family didn't like me at all and insisted she break up with me. Stella refused, and in a fit of anger, she cut ties with her family. For all these years, Julian was the only one she kept in touch with, because he, the brother who had watched her grow up, was the only one who supported our relationship. Did you know that Stella's been drinking until late every night? Julian frowned, his tone full of disapproval. She said you want to break up with her. Leo, Stella gave up her own parents for you. How could you abandon her? Do I really need to tell you how much she loves you? I knew perfectly well that Stella loved me, just as much as I loved her. But her love for me was hermetically sealed, never allowed to leak out. My love for her, however, was always on full display with nothing to hide. It was so unfair. I never understood why Stella had developed such a personality. Then Julian said, Stella had a boyfriend in college. He was her first love. When you're young, you don't know how to hold back your affection. She would cling to him, sending him 10 cheesy text messages a minute without thinking it was too much. Eventually, her intensity became a burden for the guy, and they broke up. Ever since then, she's been like this. She just doesn't know how to express love. It's either all or nothing. Leo, you should give her more chances. Julian said it as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Hadn't I given Stella enough chances? Why should I have to bear the burden of her unresolved issues from a past relationship? My affection for her had long been worn down to nothing by her endless cold words. I never wanted to have anything to do with her again. My hometown is a coastal city. The moment I stepped off the plane, I could smell the salty air on the sea breeze. After returning to my childhood home, I cleaned it up and then fell onto the bed for a good, long sleep. That night, my dreams were free of all the chaos, and I slept more deeply than I had in ages. The next day, Stella called. Leo, where did you run off to? I placed the lilies I'd bought into a vase and answered nonchalantly, What's it to you? Stella, let me remind you, you're not my girlfriend. There was a long silence on the other end before she spoke again. I'm not calling to make up with you. You still have a bunch of stuff at my place that you didn't take. It's taking up space and annoying to look at. I'm tired of seeing it. Find some time to come and get it. I had no desire to set foot in that place again, so I said, just throw it all away. Throw it all away? A hint of panic entered Stella's voice. The commemorative medals with our names engraved on them, the anniversary photo album you made, and the hand-painted postcards I sent you, you don't want any of it? That's right. I don't want any of it. I thought for a moment, then added, the garbage truck comes by at 4 p.m. If you throw it out now, it'll be gone in no time.
Stella græd hertid.
Fine. I'll make sure it's all thrown out. Don't you regret this?
Stella, I interrupted her.
Do you always have to talk to me like this? Through the phone, I could hear her breathing suddenly become ragged, but I had to keep going. Honestly, I've been sick of your attitude for a long time. I've wanted to break up with you for a long time. You got screwed over by your first love? Go deal with him. Why dump all your issues on me? What am I, some kind of trash can for your emotional baggage? I've had enough. If you have any decency, let's just go our separate ways. I hung up decisively. After that, Stella didn't call me again. I was happy for the peace and quiet. After lying around at home for 3 full days, I finally went out. As I stood across the street from a row of shops, trying to decide which restaurant to go to for lunch, a familiar, crisp, and pleasant voice sounded from behind me. Leo? Inside the Chinese restaurant, Chloe was peeling shrimp for me. When did you get back? Why didn't you contact me? How could I have faced her? Chloe and I grew up in the same neighborhood. We were close since we were kids, and she was like a sister to me, always looking out for me. After my parents passed away, I fell into a long depression and wasn't in a good mental state. Worried something would happen to me, Chloe came to my house every day to cook for me and take me out to clear my head. In my memory, she was always thoughtful and gentle-tempered. The only time she ever got angry with me was when I worked myself into a stomach hemorrhage trying to win over Stella's parents. Chloe's eyes had turned red. Is she really that great? Is she worth you ruining your health like this? At the time, I firmly told her that Stella was worth any sacrifice. Perhaps seeing that I was a lost cause, Chloe said nothing more and left quietly. After that, she was transferred to an overseas branch and was gone for many years. I hadn't seen her since. I never expected her to be back in our hometown too. Even though it had been a long time, Chloe was still the same as before, able to see right through me. She said, "Did you fight with Stella?" I shook my head. "We broke up. I don't know why, but when Stella's attitude used to hurt me, I would just think, endure it and it will pass." But seeing Chloe again after so long and thinking about the past, I suddenly felt a surge of grievance. I couldn't help but say, "Chloe, I'm heartbroken." She was stunned for a moment, then sighed helplessly. "I know. I'll go buy some fireworks later. When I was a kid, I loved setting off fireworks. Whenever I was in a bad mood, Chloe would buy a few and take me to the cliffs by the sea to let them off. It was a habit that stayed with me into adulthood." I suddenly remembered that Stella had once promised to come back to my hometown with me to set off fireworks, but it kept getting postponed for one reason or another and never happened. And now there would never be another chance. "What are you thinking about?" Chloe's voice brought me back to reality. I realized I had been holding a piece of food with my chopsticks, frozen in place, and oil had dripped onto my collar. Chloe took a napkin and wiped it for me. A faint, elegant fragrance entered my senses as she leaned closer. For a moment, I was flustered, frozen in place, my cheeks growing warm. Just as I was about to thank her, an ice-cold voice cut me off. "What do you two think you're doing?" Stella stood at the entrance, her face contorted with rage, her eyes fixed on me. "Leo, I thought you came back to your hometown to clear your head. Turns out you were cheating on me with another woman." "Shut up." Chloe was angry now too. "Don't you dare slander Leo. He didn't do anything." Stella turned to her, her eyes filled with disdain. "Who do you think you are, even daring to speak about my boyfriend?" I stopped Chloe as she was about to rush forward and said to Stella, "Whatever it is, let's take it outside. Don't make a scene in here." Stella's gaze fell on my hand, which was blocking Chloe. She shot Chloe a triumphant, provocative smirk and then turned and walked out. Chloe was worried. "I'm coming with you." I shook my head, signaling that I could handle it. Stella had driven here. She opened her trunk. The commemorative medals, the photo album, the postcards, all the things she had said she would throw away on the phone. She had brought them all with her, placing them in my hands one by one. "That day, I gathered all your things. I went through them one by one and realized just how many memories we've made over these 5 years. I couldn't bear to throw them away. Please, you keep them all, okay? I also brought fireworks. Didn't you used to say you wanted to set them off with me in the place where you grew up? How about tonight? You haven't been back home in a long time, and work isn't busy for me right now. I can stay and keep you company." I watched her quietly and let out a sigh. "Stella, you could have just apologized." Her eyes immediately reddened. She lowered her head and, after a long moment, said, "I'm sorry." The apology was like a long overdue rain, unable to moisten soil that had long since dried and cracked. But at least it gave some kind of closure to the me of the past 5 years. I nodded and turned to leave. Stella frantically grabbed my hand. A hot tear fell onto my palm. "Please, let's not break up. All the things you don't like, I'll change them. Just don't leave me." Now, finally, when she realized all her old tricks were useless and I wasn't coming back, she was finally willing to be the first to yield. I took a half step back and spoke wearily. "Let it go. I gave you too many chances, but you never valued them. Because you knew I would always back down and tolerate it, you took my love for granted, using it as a banner to hide all your terrible behavior. That's not being guarded, Stella. You're just selfish." Her face went pale, and she vehemently denied it. "No, it's not like that. I cut off my family for you, Leo. You're all I have. You can't leave me." Stella clung to my hand like it was her last lifeline. But she was the one who hadn't given it her all back then. "Did you ever try to convince your parents? Did you ever fight for me?" I looked at her tears, unmoved. "You did none of that. Even after I became a top designer in the industry, you never said a single good word about me to them. She always said she had betrayed her parents for me, but that was just a way to deepen my guilt and keep me tethered to her side. The truth was, her parents would take her back anytime she wanted. Otherwise, they wouldn't have let Julian stay in contact with her all these years. I pried her fingers off one by one. Stop this. We're done. Stella left. She had initially postured as if she was going to dig in her heels and stay by my side. But a call came from Julian, saying their father was seriously ill in the hospital, and she had to go back. Sometimes I really envied Stella. No matter what, whenever she wanted, she had a home to go back to. And I was all alone. She said she only had me, but in reality it was the other way around. I only had her. On my first day back at work after my leave, Chris found me. He looked apologetic. I'm sorry about the other day. Ben told me later that you and Stella had already broken up. I misunderstood. I told him not to worry about it. Based on Stella's reaction that day, I could guess that she had intentionally blurred the truth to set Chris up, all to make me jealous. Chris felt bad and treated me to a big dinner. After learning what Stella was really like, his face showed disdain, and he warned me, don't go soft on a woman who won't let go after a breakup. You can't give in. Of course I wouldn't. She had lost the right to make me feel soft-hearted. To make my commute easier, I rented an apartment near the office. Coincidentally, Chloe lived right next door. She had been transferred back to headquarters and would be living here long-term. When she had free time, she would come over and cook for me. Her cooking was as good as I remembered. The moment the warm, comforting smell of a home-cooked meal filled the kitchen, I had a faint feeling that maybe I wasn't so alone after all. One evening after dinner, Chloe and I went out for a walk. A familiar, slightly hoarse female voice fell on my ears. Leo. Stella stood by a lamppost not far away. The dim light cast upon her made her look haggard and thin. Ignoring Chloe's wary and hostile stance, she walked straight up to me, opened an exquisitely wrapped box, and revealed 2 rings lying inside. This was the gift I had prepared for you on our 5th anniversary. If I had given this to you then, instead of locking you out, would things have ended differently for us? The end of her sentence trembled, as if she were on the verge of shattering. Stella was wrong. She thought I couldn't forgive her just because of that one time she locked me out. But my disappointment wasn't like being drenched in a single downpour. It was a long, slow dampness that seeped into me silently, until one day I looked down and realized I was soaked through. Perhaps my reaction was too cold, because despair flickered in Stella's eyes. I'm learning how to love someone. I've really changed a lot. Just give me one more chance. Just one. I shook my head. I was willing to give in before because I loved you. But now, I can't find a single shred of love for you left. Stella's head drooped in defeat, her body swaying. She stepped forward and hugged me tightly, so hard it hurt a little, as if it were a final goodbye. I'm sorry. Then she stepped back and walked out of my sight, one step at a time. After that, I didn't see Stella for a long time. She just vanished from my life without a sound. Until one weekend afternoon, I had a craving for dessert and went out to buy some, only to have my path blocked by a Maybach. The black-tinted window rolled down, revealing a face that was both elegant and sharp. She said to me, "Mr. Evans, let's talk." I had almost forgotten the first time I met Stella's mother. I only remembered the grand hall, ostentatiously decorated, with an ornate chandelier that cast a cold, sterile light. Even though Stella was holding my hand, I couldn't feel a shred of warmth. The graceful, noble lady had stood on the landing of the stairs, looking down at me, and said flatly, "Not presentable." But now, appearing before me again, much of her sharp edge was gone. Mrs. Vance took a sip of her coffee and said slowly, "Mr. Evans, I've looked over your resume. I have to admit, you're more outstanding than I initially thought. But to marry our daughter, you're still a little lacking. However, Stella's affection for you has exceeded my expectations. For her sake, I am willing to take a step back." Her condescending tone was almost laughable. I said in a low voice, "Mrs. Vance, I'm sitting here out of respect for an elder. I ask that you show me the same respect. You don't need to elevate your daughter. From start to finish, I have never considered myself beneath her. If anything, she is unworthy of my love." Mrs. Vance looked at me for 2 seconds, then suddenly smiled and said to the phone on the table, Did you hear all that? Stella's hoarse voice slowly came from the phone. Yes. If you heard it, then pull yourself together, Mrs. Vance said, her tone hardening. The man doesn't even want you anymore. What's the use of moping around all day? Go find me the next one. I was speechless. So she had sought me out to gauge my attitude. Was she afraid I would go back on my word and lure her daughter away again? I had to admit, the mother and daughter were quite similar in some ways. Neither of them could ever just say what they meant. Mrs. Vance put down her phone and turned back to me. Honestly, the way you are now is far more admirable than when you were just trailing behind Stella. I accepted her compliment. But, as always, it was steeped in arrogance. I treated it as a joke, something to be heard and then forgotten. My life slowly returned to normal. The only news I heard of Stella came from Ben. He said Stella had once again refused an arranged match from her family, which made her mother so angry she had hit her. Don't you think she might not be over someone? I ignored the implication in Ben's words, slung my bag over my shoulder, and gave him a slight smile. Boss, it's quitting time. Don't stand in my way. It had been raining all day, and a chill hung in the air. I buttoned up my coat, not wanting to catch a cold and get another lecture from Chloe. Outside the office, Chloe was already waiting for me, holding an umbrella. Her graceful figure in the rain was like a beautiful, serene painting, attracting a lot of attention. A guy passing by walked up to ask for her number. Chloe shook her head and refused, saying there was someone she had been waiting for many years. The guy left, disappointed. She turned her head, saw me, and froze. I slipped under her umbrella and took her arm. What are you standing there for? Let's go home. Since she had been waiting for so long, I couldn't let her wait any longer. The moment the sky cleared, she took my hand and, just as gently as when she had found me when I was lost as a child, she said, "Let's go. We're going home."